Hey there, my crafty friends. If you love grunge as much as I do, then you're going to want to stick around because in the studio today, I am showing you how to take your book page from this to grunge, your regular papers from this to grunge, your tracing paper from this to grunge. I think you get the idea. I'm giving up my DIY grungy paper paint, and you're going to love how easy it is. And I bet you have all the ingredients already on hand. So meet me over on the craft desk and let's get grungy.
In a fun junk journal dream, DJ's crafting grungy scenes. Hither and Yon, where friends all meet. Paper glue and vintage treats.
Hello there, my crafty friends. Welcome to Hither and Yon Studio. If you've been here before, welcome back. DJ here in the studio today, and we're getting grungy. And that's my favorite thing to do. So I'm a happy girl. I'm a very happy girl. All right. So today I'm going to give up my recipe for my DIY grungy paper paint that you can use to turn just about any paper from bland and boring to grungy, yummy goodness. And I'm just going to show you some examples of some ones that I did specifically for this video, just to kind of show you the possibilities. I did book page that you just saw. I did some tracing paper before and after. Look how yummy that is. And listen, you know you love it. And regular cardstock or even copyweight paper. Look at this. Look at this. Even with the little rings, we're going to do some of them. This is vellum. So any vellum that you have, again, who doesn't love that? I did some ledger paper and transformed it from this to this. I did some notebook paper. You can hardly see the lines on this one, but I got it all grungy. Graph paper. I love grungy graph paper. You guys know I love graph paper and grungy graph paper. Well, that is special. You can do this with any printed paper you have. This was some stationery I've had for probably 15 years. And you can't see the picture too well, but you can see the grunge. And I also did some index cards, some time cards, which came out extra grungy delicious. And this formula actually gives you some stability to whatever you put it on. And you can make it in really small batches and just do a few sheets, or you can do a whole book if you'd like. So that's those. I did some junk mail envelopes, right? We got to do the junk mail envelopes. There's a little trick to these, so stay tuned for that. I did a paper bag. This is just the before. This is a bigger one. It didn't shrink, I promise. I even did some waxed deli sandwich papers. Look how good that looks. Just doesn't sound the same without it. Another one. This one was brown. This one got extra grungy. Oh, I love it. And I did some coffee filters. How apropos. I even did hard things like a doily, which is usually a pain to kind of coffee dye or grunge up because the delicate pieces kind of stick to the tray or the paper or whatever you're using. So I did that. I did a napkin. I didn't tear it apart or anything. There's a little trick to these as well. I did some pre-printed digitals that I did on my inkjet printer. And look, you could still see the words. It didn't run that much. You'll get a little bit of hazing and running because it's inkjet ink. But yeah, we're going to do that. And we're also going to do some colors. So let's get started, guys. All right, guys. So a little prep work. I have some paper down on my desk that I always have, but my desk is made of like a laminated wood top. And so I want to, I don't try to put water or anything directly on it. This can be a little watery at times. It doesn't have to be very messy, but it could get messy. So I want to protect my top. You might be working on a surface you don't care about. You don't need that much prep work. But what I have here is some baking paper or parchment paper. I have a piece of wax paper because wax paper is a little less porous than some baking paper can be porous. If I'm working, on just a few, I'll just use the parchment, and then the parchment gets all grungy and I dry that and use that too. So that's an extra bonus. And then I just have a silicone mat on here. This is a really cheapy one I got from Temu, but you can get these at Walmart or on Amazon, and they're pretty inexpensive. And you can just look up like a silicone baking sheet. And then over here, I have a little heat mat that I use when I do my sublimation. And then I have another piece of parchment on that. And that's what I'm going to dry on. And we're going to paint these and dry them using our special solution. And you can see how quick they're going to dry. So there's no waiting for your oven to heat up. There is no waiting for the sun to shine or a nice day to do these outside. If you have a blow dryer, a heat tool, or just some time to let them air dry, then you can actually do these anytime and using simple tools. So I'm just going to use my blow dryer to dry mine. If you have a heat tool, you can definitely use that, but I'll give you some caution to take in certain things. So this is going to be kind of off screen a little because initially I just want to show you the solution, and then I'll bring it back when we're ready to dry a few. Okay, so let's talk about our supplies. I already told you what I have on my surface area. You're going to need some kind of container to hold your DIY grungy paper paint. And then something to measure with. I have a half cup and a quarter cup measuring cup. You're going to need some white glue. You can use Elmer's. You can use PVA glue. You can use your art glitter glue if you're so inclined. But any kind of standard white glue and some instant coffee or some prepared tea. So you can do this with coffee or tea. And straight up water, which I'll show you a little later on, okay? But we're going to use instant coffee because I love coffee. And then some alternate items you could have are some ground herbs or spices, rather. So this is ground cloves, and I have some ground up coffee grinds from my Keurig. So this is a coffee pod that went through my Keurig, and I just want to get some of the grounds under there. Those are both optional though, so you don't necessarily need them. But you do need water, glue, and tea or coffee or some kind of dyed substance. You're going to want some gloves, all right, because coffee, tea, they stain your hands over time. You drop a little on your hand while you're making some coffee or whatever in the morning, it's not going to stain. But if you're constantly touching it, it gets under your fingernails. It just stains, and it's there for a while. So I prefer not to have that, and so I'm going to wear gloves. You're going to need a paintbrush or a sponge paintbrush, something like that. And I like to have a little spackle knife. This comes in handy for kind of getting stuff off the silicone mat and other techniques. And then just a spoon to kind of stir up your solution. I have a little spoon over here. Just going to clean it off quick. And then a kitchen towel, paper towel, maybe some baby wipes or something, whatever your preferred cleanup item is, because we're going to need something to keep track, to keep the stuff, because we're going to go from touching the wet paper to touching our blow dryer or heat tool, and I like to kind of dry my hands in between, and then to clean off the silicone mat. All right, let's get started. So the formula is super easy, and you can make as much or as little as you want. You can make this in small batches, which is great. So that really makes it, versatile. I have a half cup. I'm going to put some water in here. So we're going to use a half a cup of water, and then we're going to use an eighth of a cup, which I don't have, so I'm going to use half of my quarter cup. An eighth of a cup of your preferred glue. I already need help here. I'm a sloppy grungy maker. All right, we're going to take the instant coffee and we're going to add it to our water. It's better if your water is warm, mine's cold. So it just tends to, if you're using coffee, it dissolves a lot faster in hot water. And the more you use, the darker it'll be. So I'm going to leave that to you. I have some, which I'll show you here, that are darker and some that are lighter. We're just going to do the one scoop, and depending on what type of instant coffee you use, you might get a different variety of shades of coffee. So just keep that in mind. And if you're using your tea, you want to have your tea prepared. I like to overdose my tea baths, so I'll use a small amount of water and then like 3 or 4 tea bags just to kind of make it really a little darker. If you like a lighter one, then just do less. You do you. And then for my glue, I'm just going to use an eighth of a cup. So that's about your ratio. So you can make that to make it work for you. Now, it's not rocket science, guys, and it's not like an exact science. So if you have a little more, a little less, it's not a big deal. The glue serves a couple of purposes. It helps bind in some of the color and some of the other elements that we're adding, but then it also helps to make the paper that you're using more rigid and pliable because it coats the page. So that's why the glue mixture, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have a ton of it or a little bit, and it doesn't really matter which one. Can you use something like a matte gel medium? I would imagine you could, yes. I haven't tried it, but I think that it'll work just fine to do this. Okay, and then we wanna stir that up so we mix up most of that glue, but keep in mind that this will continue to mix as you use it. So if you see like little bits floating like that, don't worry too much about it, and don't use your mother's good silverware. Okay, this is like my junky craft room stuff that I'm using here. If you want to keep it to last, have a lid. Use an old pickle jar or an old, whatever, delicate artichokes in wine jar. So we got that mixed up. And then I'm just going to add a little smidge of the cloves and the coffee grounds. And this is to add some grit and grunge to our mix. And you can add as little or as much as you want. It's up to you. I like the way the cloves smell, and cloves are a little more gritty than like cinnamon or something. So I'll use these. I'll use like an allspice if I don't have my cloves. Cinnamon is nice. You can definitely add it in there. It's just, it's not going to show up as much or make as much of an appearance. Now, when your mixture dries, those little bits, some of them will be embedded under the mixture and some of them will be where you can kind of flake it off after it's done. So keep that in mind. All right, we got our mixture. We're going to put this over to the side. We're going to bring back our mat. And I'm going to get me a paintbrush. Okay, I have my paintbrush, and I have some different papers here we're going to use. And we're going to make them and dry them in one shot. And that's so we can kind of build some color. If you're going to lay these out to dry, air dry, I would lay them out on parchment because we are using glue. And if you use like towels or paper towels or anything, there's a good chance that they're going to stick to it. But the parchment, they'll peel up from. You can also use the inside of cereal boxes, that waxy paper or wax paper. You use tinfoil in a pinch. But just note that because there's a glue involved, they could stick to a surface. So, and we don't want them to stick to each other. So if I dry them, I can stack them and it goes a little faster. Okay, enough yapping. So what I'm going to do is, and you can see I have some paint, some of the DIY grungy paper paint, and there's some glue still mixed in there. That's okay. It's okay. You'll see it still works. It still works. All right, so I'm just going to get in here and I'm going to start painting my paper. Now, you don't want to get crazy because it's just going to take longer to dry. And one of the great things about this is you can make some paper really quick. So if you need just a few sheets for a project, you can just, get your mixture out, do a few sheets, dry them, and get on with your project. All right, so we have that. And then I'm going to bring back kind of work this way. I'm going to bring this back. You'll see some of it in the frame, some of it will be out of the frame, but this is what I'm drawing on. So this, when this sticks to your silicone mat, this can help you lift it. So that's why I like to have this around. We're going to put it over here. I'm going to get a paper towel for my hands so that I'm not getting this that I touched all over my blow dryer. And then I'm just using a cheap blow dryer. We've always had a bunch of these, so I'm just going to use some of this. I'll turn the sound down, and then you can watch this in real time the first time. I want to just show you how quick this goes. And I'm going to put my setting on high heat, high wind, and it's going to just dry really quick. One of the tricks is you want to hold it over top of the paper. Let me make sure I'm in frame here. I am. You want to hold it directly over the top of the paper, and the reason is if you kind of go at the side, it's going to fly away from you. I mean, you can put your finger on it, but then your finger might get warm. It's up to you. I like to go right on top. When I start to see it dry, I'm going to flip it over and work a little on the other side, and then I'll flip it over again, and we're just going to keep going in that process. Here we go. All right, so that was super quick. It's just about dry. I'm going to put a second coat on it, but I kind of wanted to show you. You see how you have those little bits? Some will scrape off. Some are kind of embedded in there. And they just make it a little more grungy. So now that we have it dried, we can go in for a second coat if we'd like. And as you let this sit, like you can store it probably for up to a month. There's just the glue and the instant coffee. I go through mine way faster than that, so it's up to. But just put your top on it and check it every so often. Make sure it's not getting moldy or anything like that. It depends on where you are, really. So now we can make it a little grungier, a little darker, and you can kind of just do it however you want. You can kind of dip it back into there, and then we'll put it back on here. And you saw me as I was drying, I was kind of also going back in with the paper towel. The drier you can start with this, the better off you are, because then it will dry faster, right? Okay, let's do this again. All right, and there we go. It's super flexible. The glue gives it a little more stability. So if you have some more fragile book page, this will help make it a little more stable. I'm not going to say it's not going to tear or crumble or crunch, but this does give it a little more stability and flexibility because of the glue. And yeah, so there we go. We have our first one, but let's say we want to add in well, actually, let's put this one to the side. It's dry, right? We can move this out of the way. And we'll go for our ledger paper. This is a little too big for my mat here, so I end up holding it and just, if your water is warm, your glue will also dissolve faster, so something else to keep in mind. I'm working in my basement, which is usually chillier than the rest of the house, so if you're working outside, it'll probably dry a lot quicker as well. But yeah, if you start with warm water or even hot water, everything will dissolve a lot faster. So since it's longer than my sheet, I'm just going to do it like that, and then I'm going to hold the other side and do that, because this is fresh ledger paper, which one of my lovely friends sent to me in Happy Mail. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to dry this off in the same way. I'm not going to watch you painfully watch me dry paper, so I'm going to dry this and I'll be right back. Okay, now, once you get a dry one, and maybe you want to add some of those coffee rings or some drips or stuff like that. So let me show you how I did that. It's really easy. You can use the bottom of a coffee cup, which is ideal because then it gives you a coffee cup ring or a teacup, whatever you have. But you can also use the top of a jar lid or, any kind of little circle or something that you have. I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to kind of rub it around in what's on my mat here. And then I'm just going to set it down. Now, this is the cup that I use to store my glue in, so that's why it looks a little wonky in there. And then you just kind of put it down, let it sit. You can do like a few here and there, kind of like, I was working, putting my coffee cup down. That's where it comes from, right? I'm going to slide it a little to get some variety. You can turn it a little, just to get like maybe half. There you go. Wipe that off before I put it anywhere. And then you can also do some drips, right? So you don't want to get too crazy with this because your paper is only going to take so much, getting wet and stuff. But if you kind of put a little bit of water in a row and then kind of hold it upside down, it'll start to drip. Once the drips form, you can kind of just add some more liquid, and there you're off to the races. Okay, this one's got a little glue in it, so we'll let that one dissipate. There you go. And we'll just come in with our dryer and dry that. And you'll see me kind of push it up and down and up and down, and it may go a little further. If I don't want it to drip anymore, I'll kind of blow it back this way because it already landed there. And then I can kind of tap it. If you can let it sit there and air dry for a little while, you'll get a darker stain to it, which I love. And if you use more coffee, you get really, really dark results. And I'll show you my mixture that I've been using forever. It's got a little more glue in it, so it's a little more, I guess gluey when it's dried. But let's get this one done. Bob's your uncle. There we go. It's all dry, and you can see our little drip marks, our dark coffee rings. Super fun. You can also splat paint, so you can just take your hand and dip it in there and splat it. You can dip it on your mat here to get some drips like that, and then dry it again. I'm not going to do that. We're going to move on to another piece. I'll just put this over here. Ooh, as I throw everything. All right, so let's move on to something like this bag here. You can use the wax ones. You can use, these are kind of like paper with a, I don't know, it's like a coated paper. But one of the things you want to keep in mind when you're doing any kind of bag is that you don't want to glue it to itself closed. So you want to make sure when you're drying it that you get it open enough to dry the center so it doesn't glue to itself. Like so. Okay, so you want to open it just a little bit before you start drying it so that you're just not gluing it to itself. Let me get my mat. And if you're having trouble getting it open, that's when this can come in handy. So when the paper is flat against itself, it might be a little tricky. Just use something thin to kind of get in there, and you'll be good to go. All right, here we go. So once that inside is mostly dry, then you can kind of hold it down and do the rest. All right, that's it. So just something to keep in mind. The same thing for envelopes. We'll do one of the envelopes, you'll see. And you don't have to really worry if you're using a blow dryer to dry for these kind of plastic bits. If you're using a heat tool, which tends to get a little hotter, then you're going to want to be careful there. Just watch it. If you see it start to kind of shrivel, get away from it. And most of these envelopes are going to have a seal on them. So what I like to do is just kind of get in here with this. And I'm not putting a lot on. This is not soaking wet. I'd rather do more coverage, like a couple of times, than worry about whether I'm, sealing my envelope to something. You just want to watch that seal. And I'm going to do this side, and then I'm going to do the other side separately. Okay, now the glue that they use to hold this stuff together is not made to get wet, really. So if this envelope gets wet, it might fall apart. Just glue it back together again, and you'll be fine. Oops, sorry. All right, here we go. So same thing like the paper bag. I just wanted to get in there and dry that. This isn't perfectly dry, but it's dry enough we can do the other side. And like I said, sometimes your glue will come apart. You just glue that when you're all done. If you've ever coffee dyed an envelope, you know it happens. All right, so we're going to add some more. And I just go right over that bit there. Don't worry about it. And we'll just splatter some on there too. And again, watch that side. Just keep checking it's not sticking to whatever you're drying it on, okay? That gluey edge. All right, and there you have it. You just glue this back together and you're good to go. And listen, sounds so yummy, guys. All right, so I'm going to do a piece of vellum because I want to show you that, or let's do tracing paper. But vellum is going to be the same way. I don't have another piece of vellum. Hold on. I do have another piece of vellum. So we'll do them both. You can kind of see how they work. And I'm going to bring out, actually, let me clean the bottom of this. I'm going to bring, this is my darker kind of grungy paste. This one has been in my craft room a little while, but it's got a little more glue and you can almost see it because it's a little more glossy, and it's been sitting. So the other one, the glue is still kind of mixing, but this one I did with warm water and a lot more of the coffee, and it's got a bit more grunge in it with different spices. So it's just yummier. And I'll do both sides. It's cool when you have kind of liquid on here because when you lay down your pieces, they kind of get weird marks and stuff. So that's always fun. Your vellum will curl, so will your tissue paper and probably your copy paper until you get the other side down. I like to go for the ends because those are usually the ones that curl up. And then look, see, because I pulled it up. It's got all those fun bits. All right, let me dry it up. Same way, no real tricks here. I just, with any of these papers, you don't want to hold your heat tool, definitely not your heat tool. You should know this if you're using a heat tool in any one space for too long because it could cause a fire. It can cause combustion. Same thing with your blow dryer. You just want to kind of keep moving it around. You can hold it in a spot for, a couple of seconds, but then move it around. Use your paper towel to kind of mop up some of the excess. If you're air drying them, you'll probably get a lot different results because you can see like there's little pools forming there. And if you just let it dry on its own, they're going to stay and be really dark. So there are some advantages to just kind of letting some air dry. All right, there we go. Super, super yummy. Hey guys, I have a tip coming up on how to preserve these and make them water fast so that you can use them in your journals and continue to build on them. So that'll be coming up a little later in the video. So that is our vellum. So let's do the tracing paper quick. And I am going to put one side down on all this yumminess that's all dotted up here. And then I'm just going to paint the other side very lightly. And then we'll do a napkin and a doily because I have some tips there to show you so that they don't kind of fall apart under you. I haven't tried tissue paper yet, but, well, not by itself. I put it on to something else. And I'm sure you can use the same tips for that. All right, so let's try this one. All right, so there we go with our tracing paper. And you can see some of the dots where we kind of pressed it in. So that was fun. Okay, you guys are getting the idea. I just want to show you the doilies. Let me grab a doily. Okay, if you've ever coffee dyed or tea dyed a doily, you know when they're drying, they tend to stick to everything. So this process actually helps you avoid that. But there are a couple of little tricks. So the first one is I do it one side at a time, and I use very little water or your paint. And I don't leave it down on this sheet for long at all, because that's when you start to run into problems. So you want to get it up, get it moving. Don't leave it there very long, okay? And then when you're drying it, you want to keep moving it around because even though it's parchment, it might still stick. And it's these delicate ends that tend to pull up, and we have glue on this, so you got to keep that in mind, all right? So what I'm going to do with the doily is I'm going to show you the whole thing so that you can watch it and see what I'm doing with moving it around, but it'll be sped up. All right, here we go. And these dry really fast. So you don't have to worry that, oh, I got to do one side, then the other. They dry so fast, it's not a big deal. Okay, and I'm going to hold one end of this because I don't want it going all the way down. I have um, my spatula there, but the doilies are so delicate, it could still kind of scrunch it or tear it. So I just like to keep my hand on it so that I don't lose it in the process. Okay, you see that didn't take very long at all, and it's super grungy. You can always go back and add some more if it's not dark enough for you, or you want to kind of add in some extra, I don't know, some extra darkness. Okay, there we go. So these more delicate items like this and these napkins, the quicker you are, the better. We're doing napkin quick because these can get tricky. So I still have all, I think this is 2 or 3 plies, probably two, attached here. And when you go to wet a napkin, what tends to happen is if you get it too wet, it kind of just pulls it apart. So what you want to do here is be very quick and be very light. So we're just going to dip our brush in there, just get a little, and you just want to kind of go quickly across it. You can put more coats. Remember, it doesn't matter if it's perfectly covered this first time around. And when you're lifting it, don't yank it up because it'll have a tendency to want to stick. All right, so we have that. And we want to keep moving this one as well, just so it doesn't stick to our parchment. All right. There we go. And like I said, you can go back over it. This one's a little hard to see just because of the pattern that it is, but you can still kind of see it. You just want to be quick, and you don't want to put a ton of water on it because then it'll just get, start to tear and stuff. And with a little patience and a lot of faith, you can work on your favorite napkins. And now that the glue is on there, it actually makes the napkin a lot more durable. So you can use it in ways that you might not have thought of in the past. All right, what else is here? Let's just do regular cardstock and an index card, and then we'll be done with, some of the basics, but you can see that you can kind of do this with just about anything. And if you make up your batch and you don't think it's dark enough, just throw another tablespoon of your coffee in there or stick another tea bag in it. You're not gonna harm anything by doing that. And you'll get some cool results. You'll find a color that you like, you'll find a formula that you like, and then you'll just keep using it because it's what you like. So it's very easy to customize it to fit the needs of your journals. And after this, we're going to go into some color. I'm going to show you how to do some color. And then I'm going to give you some tips for some other things you can add to kind of make this a little more grungy and a little more fun and a little more custom to you. So let's dry these off. All right. So there we have our cardstock and our index card. Does anybody else feel like there's 100 antelope running through their house whenever the blow dryer's on? Like there's sounds you hear that you don't hear otherwise. I feel like when the blow dryer's on, I'm hearing things that I don't normally hear. Anyway, so Let me know in the comments if you feel the same, or when you're in the shower. Why does it feel like every thump and thumper goes on when you're in the shower and nobody else is home? Why is that? I don't know. I feel like I'm being raided sometimes. All right, so that's it. You kind of get it. I gave you some tips there. Let's move into some color, because I know some of you guys just are like, grungy's nice, but what if I want to do blue? What if I want to do blue? All right, let's see. For those of you that want to do blue, let's get on to it. Let me just clean up my sheet and I'll be right back. All right, it's not perfect, but it'll do. All right, so for the any color, there's a couple of options you have. So here I made some blue. Again, I used a half a cup of water and an eighth of a cup of glue. You can make it a little more, a little less. But you want some glue in there for some, it'll kind of seal your paper and it brings the color to life. And then my secret is just food coloring. I have yellow, green, and blue. You definitely need all the primary colors. But my red apparently was popular, and I didn't have any. So we went with blue. I couldn't do purple, and I already had green. So yeah, and that's it. So you put as many drops in there as you want. I don't know how many drops I put in, probably like 10, but you can just go crazy if you want. You can also use some water-soluble inks, like, what is it called? Dr. something ink. I'll put it in the description box below. There's some inks that dry waterproof. Why can't I think of that? I use it all the time, and now it's something Dr. PH, I don't know. Anyway, you can use some inks like that. You could use your distress inks. If you have a re-inker, you can try that and see what you get. We're going to use food coloring because that's what I have. And I'm going to get out a piece of this grid paper here. Now, this is going to dry a lot lighter than it looks when I first put it on. You can see it's just like this gorgeous blue. But as it dries, it's going to be a little less intense, but you can build your color. So just coat the whole thing. I'm going to come over this with a paper towel because I put a lot of water on there and it's going to take forever to dry. So I just want to get some of it off. Otherwise we'll be here all day. But the same thing, you just kind of bring it over and dry it off. But I'll show you the change as it dries. There, so you can see how it got a lot lighter in the places where it's dry. These are a little wet. So you can just go back in now and add color where you want it. And then you go through the same process until you get it to where you want it. So I'm going to finish drying this off. I'll show you what it looks like when it's completely dry. And then we'll move into just sealing your paper so that you can use it without, you know, reactivating the glue and the whatever it is medium you're using for color. Okay, so there you can see where we went over it again and left some darker bits that it got just a little darker there. And you can just keep continuing this process. I'm going to let the rest of this air dry. And I'm just going to give you some tips on how to make this even grungier. So if you have, you know, your paper and it's all right. I want it grungier. You can do a couple of things. Any water-soluble item that you have in your stash. So if you have a watercolor pencil, if you have some of these water-soluble graphite pencils, if you have Inktense markers, which I can't find my Inktense right now, or Inktense pencils, rather, watercolor itself or gouache, looking for my watercolor. Yeah, so anything like that. I'm going to use this as an example. You can do it two ways. So you can kind of put it on your mat or a glass plate or something. And I'm going to switch this over to this that we made. So you can kind of do this, right? You can, it's water soluble, so you can kind of pick that up, and now you've made your mix a little grungier, so you can kind of make it a little darker and do that, right? You can also write on your directly on your paper, which I love to do, and then come in with your solution and kind of grunge it up that way. And this will mix right in, or you can just leave some of it show. It just darkens it a little. These are down below in my description. They are Lyra, and they are water-soluble graphite. So if you want to grab them, my Amazon links are below, which support the channel, but you don't pay any more than you would if you just bought it yourself. Those are my affiliate links, though, and I have to tell you that. So I do make a small commission when you use my links. Okay. So you can see that now we're getting grungier, and we have some streaks there, but we can just kind of do this and take that away. You can also take some of your inkers. So if you have some distress sprays or inkers, what do I got here? I got some Lost Shadow. I don't know what this is going to do. Let's see. You can kind of come in here and just build on that. And keep drying in between. What else? Let me get my watercolors. Oh, I know what else. This is some acrylic paint that has some metallic in it. So you can certainly, let's put it on the mat actually. And then add your water mix to it, because that will just kind of loosen it up. And then you can add that over top. If you want to add some black acrylic paint watered down, you can do that. So lots of things you can add to kind of grunge it up even more. Let me dry this. All right, it's not 100% dry, but you get the idea. We just keep building layers of grunge on top of it using all of the goodies in your stash or whatever you have. And you can get some really fun textures. Experiment and use up all the stuff that you have, all that stuff that you haven't been using. Use your watercolors, use your water-soluble markers, Stabilos, or whatever you have. Use your acrylic paints, watered down, and just kind of go to town. Okay, I'm going to clean up my desk, and then I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to show you how to seal up some of these papers so that when you use them in your journals, if you put something over top of them, you won't smear the pretty work that you spent so much time doing. All right, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I brought up my gel plate, but don't freak out. You don't need a gel plate. If you don't have a gel plate, don't worry. We can still do this. But I am going to use my gel plate because it's my favorite way to do this. It's quicker, it's more coverage, but you can get the same results with just putting some wax paper down. Okay, because we're not doing gel prints, we're going to coat our paper. And what are we going to coat our paper with? I am going to use acrylic matte medium. This is my favorite. It will cover the paper evenly and it will seal it. You can do a couple of coats, and then when you use it in your journal, it won't shift around. You might get a little shifting if you're really going to town, but for the most part, this will help seal it for you. So I have my gel plate. We're going to do one with wax paper, And I have a little brayer. You can use a paintbrush if you don't have a brayer. The results will just be more uniform when you're using a gel plate or a brayer. Even if you're using the brayer on the wax paper, it'll be more uniform. If you're using a paintbrush, your results might be a little more textured. So just keep that in mind. Sorry if there's a little glare. I'm just going to we'll do it on the gel plate first. And I'm just going to cover, this is, I think it's an 8x10 gel plate. My brand is Jelly. And my links for what I have are down below. And so I want to get a pretty decent coat. It's going to start to pull away from the plate. So I want to have whatever it is I'm going to seal nearby, which I don't, of course. Let me grab. All right, let's use this. You see how it's pulling away from the plate, but you want to kind of go quick and then put your paper down on there. Okay, let me roll some of this off over here. And then I'm just going to roll this down. And the matte gel medium will dry clear. So you want to clear. And can you use something else? You can probably use glue for this, but then I wouldn't put it on your jelly plate or your gel plate. But the matte gel medium dries clear and you can work on top of it without destroying what's underneath it. And using the gel plate just gives you a nice uniform look. It's a little hard to see because it is clear, but it is on there. And if I really want to make sure it's sealed in there, I'll do a couple of coats. We'll do this one. We'll put it on the wax paper because it's a doily. It doesn't matter if it has a little texture on it. So same way, I'm just going to brayer this out. And then I'm going to take my doily and I'm going to hold some part of my doily and get it into that matte gel. And I'm going to be gentle. And then I'm going to flip it over and go to a spot that still has some medium. And then you just want to set this to dry. Let it dry completely. You can use your blow dryer or your heat tool. You can add another coat. You can go back over the top. But these are very delicate, so you don't want to go crazy. It's better to do little small layers and get the whole thing covered and dried in between to kind of coat it. So that's that. What else do we have here? Got my little paper bag. So, same thing. I probably want to do both sides of this. So, and be careful again, you don't want to seal your bag closed. Okay, and then like I was saying before, if you don't want to dry it with a heat tool, you can kind of just pop it over something and let it air dry that way so that it doesn't seal itself. All right, I have a little book page here. So there we go. And so this will dry clear, like I said, and then you can work over top of it without destroying what's underneath. Now, if you don't mind destroying what's underneath and you just want it to get more grungy, then you don't even have to do this step. It's perfectly fine. you can just work over top of it. You might lose and pull up some of what's there, but not all of it. And the grungier, the better anyway, right? So yeah, that's my little lesson for you guys today. Tell me what's your favorite, and if you're going to try this, and if you have any questions about the process that I haven't covered, or I skipped something, it didn't make sense, just leave a comment below, and I will be sure to answer them for you, either in the comments or in another video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, please, and I will see you all in the next video, I hope. Have a great rest of your day or night. Bye.